Thanks for being here on time. It's always good to start our meetings on time. As you look at the agenda, you can see we have a lot to cover. Let's review our norms first. Everyone has a voice and is actively participating throughout the meeting. No complaining unless, of course, you have a solution. Come to the meetings prepared, and we promise to start and end each meeting on time.
Let's remember that our roles today, Barb, today you're the facilitator.
Okay?
Carrie, last time we decided you would be the data keeper today.
Yep.
Julie is not able to join us, so we're going to give Ashley the job of recorder.
That's fine.
I'm the timekeeper. Susie, you are the clarifier.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start off with our first standard, looking at that promise standard that we talked about our last meeting, RI 3.2, determine the main idea of the text, recount the key details, and explain how they support the main idea.
Yeah, that's coming up in ELA Unit 3. I'm almost ready for that.
Yeah, I remember that kind of being difficult last year for them to do.
Yeah, it's a challenging standard. Let's look at the CFA we used last year and see if we want to make any adjustments.
Okay, Barb.
I brought those, yep, I brought those for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I remember this.
Now, I remember the students are asked to respond in two different ways. Remember the first part, they are to select the main idea from multiple choice options. Then if you guys look at the second part, they have to generate their own understanding of the main idea after reading the short passage. It looks like there's 5 of each.
I remember from last year, it seemed like the kids really had a hard time with the multiple choice of picking from given main ideas more than they had difficulty with coming up with their own main idea.
I do recall that as well.
So do you think we need to make changes to it or just leave it as it is?
Let's take a couple minutes just to really look it over. Any suggestions from anyone?
Monica and I were just talking that we were surprised that the multiple choice was more challenging than generating their own. So we really liked having both the formats.
I think overall it's a solid assessment, Barb.
So I think we can take that into consideration, what we remember from the last time we gave this assessment. So if I don't hear anything else from anyone, we will agree that this is the assessment that we'll use. So our next step will be to look at our promise standard at a glance organizer. And let's talk about, so we're all on the same page, what proficiency looks like and at what level.
I have that up on the smartboard if anybody wants to see it, but can somebody remind me what the standard was for that so I can include it at the top?
The nomenclature?
Yep.
It's RI 3.2.
Thank you.
And the depth of knowledge, would you like that as well?
Yes, please.
Is 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Let's start.
Do we want to start with our identifying our learning targets? That seems like a good place to start.
Yeah, before we go into the quadrants.
Yeah. So our focus really is that we want them to be able to determine the main idea of the text.
Yes.
So
For the first part, for the multiple
yes.
choice, we want them to be able to select it. So it's I can statements.
I can identify and select the main idea of a text.
Good, I like how you kept it simple and student friendly.
Okay, And then for the second part where they have to come up with their own,
I think we could just change the word select to write.
so,
I can identify and write the main idea of the text. That works.
okay, so we're ready for our quadrants. Should we start at standard and work from there?
That always makes the most sense to me.
Yes.
If a child were proficient, what would it look like? And then work up or work down.
So there's 10 questions on this assessment. So if we say the student is proficient, what would that look like?
I would like to see them at least 80% to consider them being at proficient.
I think if we say they're at least 80%, then we know they can do some selecting and some of the writing.
So we could say at least 8 or 9?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are saying 80% or 90% to be proficient.
Thank you, by the way, for putting this on Google Maps so we can see.
You are welcome. Okay, so I have so far 80 to 90%, 8 or 9 out of 10 on the common formative assessment.
And so really, what we're saying is they can select most correct and they can write most correct.
So the students can select and write the main idea of a text.
Yep. For most of the questions.
Most of the questions.
Okay.
So I think the easiest step from here would be the high performance, because if we're saying 80 to 90%, clearly high performance is going to be 100%.
Yep.
That is easy.
Yep.
So that's 10 out of 10. For those who like it written that way.
It's nice once you work together for a while, you get to know your learning style of your PLC members.
Thank you for putting it that way for me.
So then we're going to say students can select and write for all of the questions?
Or
The main
Without
idea
error.
without error.
Ooh, I like that.
Without error. Approaching standard, should we go from there and work our way down to basic?
Yeah.
What about 60 to 70%?
Can you tell me why you chose 60 to 70%?
Okay, Susie, you're the one, somebody said go to approaching, and I'll add my 60 and 70 with no comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so should we go to approaching standard next, just a step down from at standard?
Makes sense to me.
Sounds good.
So our at standard was 80 to 90% on the common formative assessment. So what are we thinking for approaching standard?
I would think I'd want them to have at least 60% so I could see that they knew somewhat of how to pick the main idea. Less than 60%, it could just be lucky guessing.
Yeah.
Since at standard was 80 to 90, should we say approaching would be 60 to 70 then?
Yeah.
Plus, if you give at least 60% correct, that means they do have to answer something correctly on both sections.
Right.
I like that.
Thank you. Okay, so I am putting for approaching standards 60 to 70%, 6 or 7 out of 10 on the common formative assessment.
Correct.
So that will, what will that look like then for our students.
That would mean the students are developing some understanding on selecting or writing. They could be really good on one and maybe not so proficient on the other.
Okay. And then those students would probably require some additional support.
Yes.
Okay. So then basic, obviously, would be 50% or less, or below 60%.
Below
Yeah.
60.
Yep.
And then what will we say?
Well, if we said, for approaching, we said developing some understanding, could we, our descriptor be minimal understanding?
Okay.
Students have minimal understanding.
Selecting and writing. Is it selecting and writing or selecting or?
And they will require substantial support.
Yeah, they will be more than approaching them. Okay, so our 4 quadrants are all filled in on what proficiency will look like for this standard. What's next?
I think we could go ahead and talk about how we're going to teach this. What,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let's create a menu of strategies.
Okay, since I'm a recorder, would you like me to write those?
Yeah, thanks.
Dash.
Sure.
Oh, main idea bags.
I like those.
Yes.
I have used those in the past.
The
They're a
kids
good
like
way
to
to
do those.
start.
Yes. Very engaging.
You know, something else I've done is grouping words. It's kind of like the main idea bags instead of pictures. They're kind of grouping words that are the same together. So I call it the grouping word strategy.
The other one would be idea task cards. I know we've shared those before, but that's an option where the kids really have an opportunity to really practice that skill.
And I have those in my room if anybody needs to borrow those.
Thank you. I use a lot of graphic organizers as we're working through things.
I think really what I've found successful is really taking time to be very explicit in distinguishing this is the main idea and these are the details that support it. So just that explicit instruction.
And there's a graphic organizer for that too.
Okay, oh good.
You know, along the same lines of that is I like to point out to the kids the text features, like the titles and the headings and the pictures, that they need to be using those things to help them come up with the main idea as well.
Okay, so just write text features.
Yep.
There was that one activity, and Ashley, I think you had gotten it off Teachers Pay Teachers or something, but it's called Thinking About the Titles, and it gave title choices based on the passage, like what would be a good title for this passage.
Okay.
I remember using that last year.
I think scaffolding from the topic to the main idea and then to the supporting details, breaking it down that far for kids, I think is effective.
Can you repeat that for me?
Topic to main idea to supporting details.
And spacing them out for kids like that, teaching them separately first before putting them is probably really helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
I've had kids before when we just focus on one paragraph at a time, breaking the paragraph apart into topic, sentence, and then other details, and then actually even highlighting it, so color coding the details in the paragraph.
So breaking apart and color coding?
Yes.
Yes.
Paragraphs.
They love using the highlighters too.
They do.
And I've got tons in my room if anyone wants to borrow them.
Perfect.
And do you remember that big binder that we made a couple years ago that had a lot of games and cards just for practice in it? I think that binder is in one of our rooms.
Oh, I saw it up in Ashley's cupboard.
Oh, it did, yeah.
It's
you're
up,
right.
Ashley has it.
Oh, guys, we better keep moving our times up. Let's move on to the nuts and bolts portion of our meeting.
Okay, as far as housekeeping, then looking at our agenda, I see that we have Valentine parties coming up. What are we thinking about times?
Is it important that we all do our party at the same time this year? I know we have in the past, but I know our schedules are really different.
I know mine's towards the end of the day.
I'm almost thinking about having mine first thing to get it over with.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing a breakfast. Have my breakfast, have the party,
That's a good
and
idea.
get it over with.
Okay, I'll consider
But I'd
that.
try it.
I might consider that.
Yeah, I
I'm
might too.
thinking.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Talk to room mothers and see what's happening. And can you make sure you let Ashley and I know so we can be a part of your?
Okay.
Absolutely, thanks.
So now we're thinking we might all go morning?
Yeah.
Good idea. Okay. I'm willing to switch it up a bit.
All right.
Let's take a look at our agenda for the next meeting.
You gonna pull that up on Google Docs, Gary?
I'll pull that up and let me know. I'll just change from what we've had this week. What do we want to focus on for next week?
Well, will everyone be ready to share the multiplication data from that assessment we're going to be giving in the next couple of days? Barb, do you think you'll be ready by next week?
I will be ready by next week.
Susie?
Yeah, I can be ready. Will Julie be ready by next week?
I think she will be.
Perfect.
She kind of told me where she was.
Yeah, and I've been co-teaching in there with her, so we're ready for the multiplication system.
Okay, just to clarify, to back up a little bit, did we pick a target date for analyzing our CFA from the main idea?
We were looking at about 3 weeks, right? So that would be the third
Oh.
Wednesday in February.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that. I'll write it down.
Yeah, that would work well.
So we'll be ready to share out our data from the assessment we looked at today, correct?
From the main
Yeah,
idea.
From the
Yep.
main idea, 3 weeks, or I'm sorry, third Wednesday in February.
Okay, another part of our meeting, which is always a fun time, what about celebrations? Any success stories that anyone has that's happened in their classroom? Or from teaching specific lessons? Anything anyone want to share?
We just started a classroom-wide press intervention for fluency, and it's really working nicely in my room. We've only done it for a few days, but I'm really excited about how we started off, and the kids seem to be enjoying it.
You know, Susie, I would like to learn a little bit more about that intervention. Can we get together sometime?
Sure.
Thanks.
Going along with that, I've been notified that most of the students have passed out of our Read Naturally, the first list that we had given. So we need to be considering who our next students are going to be. And that's exciting to know that they've met their fluency goal through working in Read Naturally.
Excellent. Oh, our time is coming to an end. Let's review our norms and see how we did today.
Okay, how did we do as a group with everyone has a voice? Did we actively participate throughout the entire meeting? No complaining. We all came to the meeting with what we needed, the ideas for brainstorming for main idea and details, those particular lessons or tools that will help us all. And we started on time. How are we doing for time for ending?
We're a little bit ahead.
Great.
Great.
Good meeting today, guys.
Good job. Cut.